You're listening to the Fooled by the Root podcast.
Hello, precious people. This is your host, Heidi Marble, and I am thrilled to introduce our guest today, Michael Raymond Porter. Before we get going on his submission, which is what I want to read to you first, I just want to tell you that Michael has sent me so many amazing messages of encouragement and support throughout my healing journey over the last 8 months. We're going to talk more about that, but it's just such a beautiful thing that we can connect and be there for each other as adopted people. When I received Michael's submission, it was one of those things that just stopped me in my tracks, and he agreed that I could go ahead and read his words. Here we go. In July, I will be 54 years old, and I am still trying to find solace in this adopted life. Although you ask for a bio submission, I cannot give you one, for I do not have one. Although I do not feel like I am a failure, I know I am not a success either. Therein lies so much of my internal disappointment. I am not a victim, but it is impossible for me not to know where I am in life right now. It is a direct result of where and what happened to me being adopted. I am having such a hard time with that fact. Who and what would I be had I not been adopted? I understand that I am so much luckier and fortunate than other adoptees that were stolen from their mothers, but it still hurts, and it's hard to accept at times, meaning I became a ward of California because my father beat my mother very badly. So my 2 older brothers and a sister were placed in foster care so many years ago. At some point soon after, my mother, damn it, why do you do so? I miss you. Why couldn't you overcome your sadness? I don't know if she took her own life, overdosed, or even possibly was murdered. I'll never know. Being in California foster care, that guaranteed my adoption. I am now so exhausted. That is like some powerful, vulnerable truth telling. And I thank you for that, because that is an act of courage. That is the truth. And so I know we're starting with this very hard truth, your beginning, but there's so much more to your story and your resilience. And I just want to thank you first and foremost for sharing that with me and trusting our amazing audience with your heart. You know, when I was going through my difficulties and you were writing to me, it was really amazing because you were kind of at the point of discovering things. So you would send me articles and clippings and different encouragements. One of the things that really resonated with me too, because sometimes we have a hard time putting our words to our feelings, like connecting that, right? And you wrote to me, I literally feel the weight of sadness and anxiety and a crash of disappointment as you're seeking and trying to find answers and bumping up against all of these challenges. Maybe you can start, Michael, if we can go like way back. When were you aware of your adoption, and can you kind of build your story from childhood up for us for a little while?
I was always told that I was adopted. I can't tell you a specific age or day or conversation. I hear some adoptees, they remember the specific. We did not have that book about the chosen child in the house. Not that I remember, but the parents who raised me, their reasoning for telling me I was adopted, probably they were told to tell me by the psychology of the day, but their opinion was they did not want me to be making progress in life in my 20s or 30s. And you get a phone call or a letter, or someone shows up at your door and says, hi, I'm your biological insert correct relative there. So for that reason, they wanted me to know, and seeing now and listening to so many adoptees or NPEs who did not know it because it wasn't a fiber of their being as they grew up, the shock and the derailing of their life is so much more significant had they known. Mm-hmm. So we had always been told, my parents that adopted me had a biological daughter. prior to her, I've heard anywhere from 2 to 5 miscarriages. And they were both single children growing up, and they didn't want their daughter to be an only child. But the story is relayed to me that if you have another miscarriage, your wife could have a mental breakdown after so many. So I don't know what the true number is, but there were so many miscarriages. And their daughter apparently came out of the womb with the umbilical cord wrapped around her neck, and she was turning blue. So there was almost another loss for them. For that reason, they wanted a larger family. But that daughter of theirs said to me once, Mom and Dad didn't want me to be an only child. And that's such a key statement. Mm. Did you adopt me because you want a larger family, or did you not want your daughter to be an only child? And I saw a lot of that. I felt a lot of that growing up, that it wasn't so much about the three of us that were adopted. It was more about us fulfilling your needs. And that's a negative thing. Well, how can you be so ungrateful? I'm not ungrateful, but that was there. That was part of the upbringing. I know it was there. I saw it with my own eyes. I felt that I was on the receiving end of it.
A lot of adopted people are told that they're special, that they're chosen. But if you feel like you're a place card to fill in a void somewhere, it almost feels like it takes the personal part of who you are out of it.
That's a great summation. That's how it is.
Yeah.
As I have looked back, I realized that they love me and that there was a relationship there. But I think the blank slate, the baby's a blank slate. And so here's the medical professionals telling parents, if you adopt this child and you just raise this child as if it's your own, they're going to assimilate, and it's going to be as if it was your own child, like you gave birth to it. And that's just, so as I got older and I wasn't meeting their standards, they were both very intelligent, educated, both college graduates. That's where they met. That's when they got married as they graduated college. I can look back and I can just see the disappointment rise as I didn't meet their expectations. I just wasn't good in school. I had a hard time studying. I had a hard time focusing. When I was a kid, I don't think they had ADD. I've never been diagnosed with it, but I certainly can get distracted very easily, very quickly. And when I was a teenager, I was trying to do schoolwork. I had a hard time.
Yeah.
And so I think, and then I didn't necessarily have the passions that they had. Whereas like you meet like these adopted, or not meet, excuse me, but you hear these stories of adopted people, they find their biological father and mother, and wow, they were a painter. And the adoptee's a painter. So I didn't have some of the same interest and likes as they did. And I just think that there was a disappointment because in their minds and in their psyche, hey, they said that if we adopt this child, he's going to become like us. I did in some ways, in some mannerisms and some habits, but not necessarily in their likes and dislikes. And there was a level of disappointment. And they didn't say, you disappoint me. If you did something specifically that you shouldn't do, you should be old enough not to make dumb decisions. Not something like that, but I think you don't have to say that I'm disappointing them. You could just pick up on it. And now that I'm older and I have better reasoning skills, I look back at what I remember. I'm certain it was there.
It's almost more painful to feel it than to hear it. That's a very difficult thing. And you're just trying to be you in a situation where you don't necessarily fit in, and you don't know why you don't fit in when you're young. You don't fully understand the scope. That we do come with a history. Sadly, I think that's a lot of what we're trying to break through here, is that you can't just graft people on to different things without a ramification. And that's hard for a young child to try to figure out. And then, of course, when we become adults, here we are in this tangled mess, trying to sort through everything.
And when you say the grafting this child into a family and there's ramifications, the ramifications would be a whole lot easier to accept and to process and to adapt into your life if it were acknowledged by all parties. But when it's not acknowledged by all parties, mainly the parents or even other family members, then you're conditioned to keep quiet and not speak about it. So is that healthy? Because then you bury that down inside, and one day your emotions come out, or as the one book that people talk about, the body keeps score.
Mhm.
Who knows what you're getting sick from? Just not from a chemical, or not from a poor diet, but just from your emotions that you've tamped down for years.
No, Michael, that's so powerfully said. And that's the reason that, these conversations are so important. And I so appreciate your vulnerability and you speaking about this, because I think that is how we create change. We need to educate people and parents, because they were told, this is what you do. Here are the ways that you integrate this child into your life, and everything will be fine. You kind of dust your hands off. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. And so by, telling the truth, it's really important. So I thank you for sharing that. And can you tell us a little bit more about, like, as you got older and you went off on your own, and, what did that relationship with your adopted family, like, turn out like, and when did you start to seek your own truth biologically?
I have always wanted to know about my family. So going back to when, so I'm adopted. I go into foster care at 9 months. All four of us, 9 months. At age 2 years and 1 month is when my mother took her own life, or the man she was with murdered her, or it's like a combination of both. But as I have found biological family, apparently this was something that she did on a regular basis, including my oldest brother, who told me that he found her twice with slashed wrists. So when you're 6, 7, 8 years old, you shouldn't find your mother. You don't want to find anybody like that, but you don't want to find your mother. And he had my 3 older siblings, they all have their level of issues. It's haunted them all their life. It's haunted all of us. So I'm awarded the state of California in foster care, and then the parents that adopted me were my foster parents. I'm gonna guess maybe 2 years. I've looked at the documents, but I forget a little bit. My father tells me that when the social worker was turning me over to them, he relays that she had a bit of trepidation, thinking that maybe he was going to give me back because I wet the bed. Now, come to find out, a lot of adoptees do. And apparently I had lashes on my legs and my back. So whoever the previous foster parents were, their method was, a switch or whatever they used. Who knows? No, I do not remember that. I'm not saying that I do. So December 28, 1972, I was legally murdered by the state of California. I say that I'm being sarcastic. Michael Raymond Porter ceased to exist, and I'm Michael somebody else. And then I became their child. They moved to a South American country, and they adopted 2 more kids younger than myself. So there's a total of 6. After that, we moved to the Caribbean, and in the Caribbean is when your original question was, how did you know you were adopted? I've been told all my life, but the one that stands out to me is what I had been told, or what I'm age 11. I do not remember ever saying this. It doesn't really sound like my character for who I am, but I was told that if I was being disciplined by my mother, or I got mad, that I would say that my mother, my real mother, is going to come get me. And I threw in there that she was prettier than her. That just doesn't sound like me. My dad did have a very habit of embellishing things. And he sits me down on the couch and says, Michael, your mother is not going to come for you, because your mother got sick and went into the hospital. When she got better, she was going to get you, but she passed away. Now, there's truth to that story, but it's also a lie that you tell an 11-year-old, because you don't want to tell them, well, your mom took her own life. So age 11 is when I really, really knew that I can remember the specifics about you're adopted and you're our child, and we love you and we're going to raise you as our own. Then we lived in Central America, and it always bothered me because you don't look like anybody in your family. I never, ever, even living in an adopted family, ever considered transracial adoption. They were just my younger brother and sister. And even though we live in a house where 50% of the family is adopted, we didn't talk about it. Us kids didn't talk about it. My younger sister, she yelled at me once because I told someone we were adopted. She didn't want anybody to know. To this day, she says she's from a different country than the one that she is because she just has not worked through it. My youngest brother, when our father who raised us passed away, he just said, he's my dad, I'm fine with it. I never really wanted to deal with it. So I can't share anything with him because I don't want to hurt him. I don't want to be the one that cracks the dam that rips it open. If either one of them come to me and ask me about it, what do you know? What do you suggest? I'll be glad to help them, but I will not initiate the conversation. I just think it's sad that 50% of our family's adopted and we never talked about it. We knew, we all know we're adopted, but you just didn't talk. There was no conversation about it. But I've always wanted to know. Growing up, I never had a problem because I was adopted. Like, well, that's what I am. I said, I'm adopted. And people would ask me, do you want to find your real parents or your, and I would say, well, my mother passed away and I'd like to find my father so I could slap him because I felt abandoned. I felt like, why? Okay, well, if mom passed away, and at that time I thought it was a sickness. Well, what about the dad? Well, where's he? And it wasn't only till 2 years ago when I'm reading the adoption paperwork that I have that I was relinquished. Now, I don't know if relinquish is the legal word they use because a parent says, I can't take care of this child. And does it apply equally to the person I'm in foster care and they can't find him? And he disappears, which is what I'm told by my adoptive parents. We tried to find them, or the state tried to find them. So they used the word relinquish to represent both scenarios. So I don't know if he said, hey, you take care of, there's nothing I can do with them. That was just a couple years ago, but I've always wanted to know about my family. When my upbringing was, I was told what to do, when to do it, how to do it. I enlisted in the Marine Corps and they tell you what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. I naturally gravitated to a church and they told me what to do, when to do it, how to do it. And right in my 30s, I just feel like everybody tells me what to do. And there's some comfort in it. That's some security in it. But on the inside, I'm like, I just don't want to be this person anymore. When I was 16 in high school, the mother who adopted me, she passed away from cancer. Mm-hmm. So she was only mother for 13 years. My father, that's his high school sweetheart. They've been married 23 years. And within 9 months, he was getting remarried because he was in denial. Yeah, exactly. And we're trying to, you need to slow down. You need to slow down. But he was trying to recreate the family he lost, like the nuclear family that he was used to. He got remarried. I drop out of college. I enlist in the Marine Corps and I'm on the phone at the USO and he goes, well, I've asked so-and-so for a divorce. And this is just 2.5 years later because he just didn't stop. He wouldn't stop. And the same words that he used to bring her into the house, and I mean literally the same sentences, he put it on me that as easily as I should accept her into the house as the new mother figure, stepmother figure, was the same words he said that he wanted me just to dismiss her like he did. And I couldn't agree with it. Now I realized that the way I said things probably weren't right, but and in that moment he disowned me. The next time I spoke to him, he said that you are no longer my son. But that was his way of doing things. It was, you're in his house, it's his rules. Now I'm not in his house anymore, but because there's a lack of relationship and more of a gratitude factor, like you should be grateful and appreciative. Well, I am, but that doesn't mean that I'm your peasant. I'm not a servant in your kingdom. I'm supposed to be your son. Just because I disagree with you, because I watched what it did to her kids. I watched it did to my younger siblings. His daughter was in college and she was able to avoid a lot of it, but it doesn't mean it wasn't affecting her. Her mother died when she's 18 and she's in her freshman year of college. And she stayed away. She stayed away because she just couldn't deal with it. So he disowned me. And when he did that, this is the meanness of what he did. And in it, I benefited. But so I was coming back for leave from overseas. And he said, well, when you come here, I won't be here. But if you get your stuff out of the house, because if you don't, I'll throw it out. So I walk in the front door, and by the landing, or the front landing, there's a table where keys and stuff go. And there's a packet. And it says your adoption paperwork. In it, and the envelope, I still have the envelope. The envelope is his APO address for the overseas duty station that he was stationed at when he severed ties with my grandfather. I forgot that part, where when he sat me down and said that my mother was sick and that I was adopted because my mother was sick. Up until that time, he'd been communicating with my biological grandfather. And it was at that point that he decided, when I was 11, to cut off communication. But in that packet was 3 photos of my siblings, one of each of them, in their teenage years, some photos of my biological father, and it was contact numbers. So, I mean, this happened when I was 19, 20. But you're in the service and you only have so much time in the States, and then your leave is up. You got to get back to, you got your responsibilities. So I just held on to it. But, and because I was overseas and there's no internet or anything like that. So if I was going to search or use the phone, I've got to be in the United States, because even that's going to be expensive. But to dial, to use a phone card or collect from overseas, that would have been expensive. So within that information, so 1990, I met my wife and we got married 6 months later. And about 3 years into our marriage, I came home, and when I walked in the door from work, my wife goes, I found them. I'm like, found who? Your grandfather. He gave me information for your sister and your brother. And she might as well come up and just throw a bucket of ice water in my face, because this is a physical presence, a weight that's been in my soul and on my shoulders and on my mind, in my ghost kingdom for 23, 24, 25 years. So in my father disowning me for that period, he gave me the information. And that's how I was able to find my biological family, because my grandfather still had the same phone number let's say 1995 was the same phone number from 1979. He hadn't changed it. Decided just to do something nice and call around. She actually spoke to my grandfather. And that's how I actually found out where my mother's buried, in Whittier, California.
Oh my gosh!
I've been able to visit her grave a few times, and it overwhelms me every time too. It's a reminder of the world falling apart.
Oh my gosh! It's just, and you're just now in your 20s in your story, and so much has happened. So as you're going through life and these like you said, those water bucket moments where you're just getting washed over by these shocking revelations and having to deal with such huge losses, to me, Michael, you just have such a humongous heart and compassion. And I wonder, I think about you being in the Marines and the exhaustive part of this process. You had written to me about the tip of the spear, and I wonder if this would be a good time to interject that, just because I think so many people in our audience can relate to just the totality that this takes on you from every angle, physically, emotionally, spiritually.
Well, the tip of the spear to me relates to yourself, people like yourself and Damon Davis and the 2 ladies that do, at the moment, it escapes me the name of their podcast, Adoption, the making of me, mm-hmm. Where you guys are the tip of the spear doing these podcasts and helping so many people, because I'm 54, I've never had counseling. I've never been to a therapist. I've never been to a counselor for anything or for this. It wasn't something that was brought up. It wasn't something that I think my parents thought was necessary. I don't know if they thought maybe it's a sign of weakness or it's expensive. Apparently it is. I'm amazed at how many adoptees have become therapists. I dropped out of college, and you've got these guests that come on these different podcasts, and they have masters and PhDs, and it's all about trying to help people, specifically NPEs and adoptees, process what's happened to them and help them. So when I was referring to the tip of the spear, you have just from the Marine Corps, you go to boot camp, and the purpose of boot camp is to separate you from being a civilian. They want you to become a Marine and act a certain way and respond a certain way. Ultimately, everything is for the purpose of combat. In combat, you can't have someone, excuse me, a minute there, Sergeant. Can't have that. No, Sergeant said, I need you to take that corner, go take that corner. So you go to boot camp, and that's your basic training plus your school of infantry. From there, you then would go to your specific school. So it wasn't like this when I was in it. It's changed since, but it's boot camp, then your school of infantry. So everybody in the event that it gets so bad that even the people in the rear are going to get overrun, they can all start working relatively cohesively, and there's going to be some structure, and you might turn the tide of the battle. Then you go to your specific school. So you could be first you become an infantryman, but then your specialty is going to be, you're going to go work in the chow hall, you're going to be a cook, or you're going to go into the pay office and you're going to be a payroll clerk, or you're going to be an armor and fixed weapons. Well, from there, there's a specialty unit, which is recon. And this is all they had when I was in was recon, but you had to be infantry first. Then you had to qualify. You had to go through their testing. The Marine Corps, I can't say specifically, but it's maybe about 186,000, 189,000 men and women only. Then recon, then infantry is 30, 40, or 50,000 with everybody else being support units. Then you get to recon. Now you're dropping down to just a few thousand, whatever it is, 5 or 6 or 7,000. And then since the war on terror started, they didn't have this when I was in. It was MARSOC, which is Marine Special Operations Group, and these are the best of the recon Marines. And again, it's another brutal testing process, and they become the tip of the spear. They're the first ones in for specific missions. Infantry is just basically line them up, not like the Civil War, but let's just go in and overwhelm with crushing power. Whereas MARSOC is specific mission, specific skill set. They need a little bit more finesse. Instead of a broadsword, we need a surgical scalpel. You being what you do and what other podcasters are doing with the adoption community are like the tip of the spear, because you're way out in front. And you mentioned how each podcast sometimes drains you, or almost every time drains you for half an hour, 45 minutes to whatever it is. That's tip of the spear type of conduct, because during this war on terror, Iraq and Afghanistan, they were using the tip of the spear guys so much that they didn't have time to decompress from the last mission and from the last one. And it just started stacking up and stacking up and stacking up. And then finally they're like, okay, you guys, you have men and women that are down because of just sheer exhaustion. They're not a machine. They're not a weapon that you can replace the barrel. They're not a tank that you can, put new treads on. They're not a helicopter. You can just switch out the blades and the filters. These are human beings, and they're just pushing them, and they just became exhausted. And because of the culture of the military, they're not going to say, excuse me, sir, I'm exhausted. It takes a real good leader to look at there and say, my men and my women are exhausted. I need some downtime. So
a lot of adopted people, and probably a lot of human beings in general, can relate to just that pushing past exhaustion and not listening to the body and the mind and the soul when it's just like we're on a mission and we aren't necessarily maybe processing the way we need to. And then you just hit this wall and everything implodes. And it's a very real experience. I think a lot of adopted people, it is a lot like boot camp. You're going into these situations where you're just pushed to all of your limits emotionally and physically with reunion and all of these things. And So I really like that you were able to kind of help us think about that in a different way. And, before we go back into your story, I think that you were so great at advice. And, especially some of the advice that you gave me, like slow down, take care of yourself, replenish. So what would you say to adopted people that are kind of in this frenzied state?
Well, the term I've not heard it until recently was the one about coming out of the fog. Like, and I realized that what got me started looking so much, it was like, as I said in my original submission, I'm 50 years old. I'm in my 50s. And I just started, how did I get here? How did I get to this place in my life? And so I go backwards and I start looking at being told what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and the different layers from the house I was raised in, to the Marine Corps, to the church I went to then being in my 30s and 40s, not really being able to make a decision for myself. And so I started looking. I was like, I want to know the answers. I was trying to differentiate between what is nature and what is nurture in my life. What part of me is from the people who raised me, and is there any way for me to find out what part of me is from the people that made me and the family, the genetic families that I come from? And that's when you hear about coming out of the fog. So if you think about fog, what's the two things they tell you in fog, inclement weather? One, you need to have the right tires, you need to have the right equipment, and you need to slow down. If you're in a fog bank and you're driving along and you're going, you see it all the time. Every time that you go in, anybody who's listening to this, who's driving, you'll see some fool pass, like you're going so fast, and then they're in a ditch. What happens when that fog clears? As soon as it clears and there's a bright sky, you can't see because that sun reflects, right? Your eyes haven't adjusted and it's reflecting off the windshield and you crash. So if you're in the fog and you feel like you're going faster and faster, you need to pull over, slow down, pull over. And when I say pull over, if you need to stop searching for a little bit, stop searching for a little bit. You need the right equipment. If the right equipment means listen to as many podcasts as you can, listen to their stories, play that podcast again, so you can avoid the mistakes that the other adoptees and NPEs have made. So they've already suffered from the mistake. Listen to what they're saying so you don't make the same one. No guarantee that you're still not going to have an adverse reaction. And who's to say that you won't have a great reaction from whatever it is you're trying to accomplish or who you're searching for. But coming out of the fog, sometimes I think people need to pull over. Let the storm blow over. And I'm talking about the storm inside of you. And I say that's so easy for me to say, but I know that once you get on the hunt and you start finding, if you're using Ancestry or 23andMe or different myriad different types of search people finder search engines that you can use, and you find a clue, it's great, and then you find a phone number. Before you make that phone call, before you send that letter, stop and take a moment, slow down.
Michael, I love that so much. So let's talk a little bit about your father, because you sent me this incredible article. I'm like, Michael, your life could be a movie, because I think, if we can just bring it up to date, because you've been really in the process of seeking, and you've been finding out some really interesting things. And what you said in one of your notes to me is that finding out about your father's childhood, it actually helped you. Can you describe a little bit more about this very, very dynamic man who had quite the rich history?
I'll combine it with him and both my mother, who took her life. And I said to my wife recently, I said, my world fell apart when I was 9 months old. And she said to me, Michael, your life fell apart long before you were born. There's a quote I heard on a podcast, and I don't remember who said it, or I can't give credit to who it is, but it is, every adopted family is built on the ashes of another. And I added to that, and some are still smoldering. So people that find their families after they're in their 50s, their 60s and 70s, and they find this family When I say it's still smoldering, when you get an adverse reaction, your biological mother is hesitant, or a brother or sister, they're half or they're full and they're hesitant. That's that smoldering part, because unfortunately, we become a reminder of some time in their life that they've pushed down just as much as maybe we have pushed down being adopted. They've pushed down giving away in adoption. So for me, coincidentally, on the weekend that I paid a private investigator $500 to try and locate my father, I should back up. I had a clopen adoption. It was closed, but it was partially open, so I call it a clopen. So it's closed. It's closed by the state of California. I cannot get my original birth certificate, but my grandfather was in communication with the parents who adopted me, because his other children are grown ladies with toddlers. They couldn't take us in. He's older, but he couldn't take us in. So two of us were adopted, and the other two went into foster care and were raised by different family members. So he was in communication with my father. So I paid a detective $500. So the reason I said I had to open adoption, when I found my biological family, they gave me, or in the information my father gave me when he had the 4 years of disownment, it had my birth announcement in the original newspaper, who my parents were. So I've always known the names of my biological parents. So I gave that to the private investigator at the same time that I signed up for Ancestry DNA. And lo and behold, my father's name came up on Ancestry DNA. The private detective couldn't find anything. And if he did, it was stuff that I had already found by using Ancestry DNA. As I'm searching newspaper articles, and I subscribe to newspapers.com, and there's a bit of a discount if you're doing it through Ancestry. And this article comes up for a 21-year-old man in 1954, Earl Clifford Porter, who was my father, that he was involved in not one, but several different robberies. This story was about one particular robbery where he decided to get in the shootout with the the LA Sheriff's Department. So the article records it as him being the leader. So I take it as, okay, he's got leadership skills, but he doesn't have very good plan. He doesn't have planning skills.
I like this.
As he timed the robbery for not a cash office, an insurance office. I guess, insurance office, he saw like who knows what his thinking was, but he did it right at the shift change for the nearest substation of the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. So instead of getting whatever it'd be, 10 or 12 responds, everybody's there. They got 40 officers to respond. And then when the first couple show up, he decides, well, I'm going to shoot it out with them. He gets wounded and surrenders, and he wounds two deputies. So this is this man's background at age 21. But a half cousin that I found had found our grandfather's. It wouldn't be an article in the paper. He died in an industrial accident. And when they notified my father of his father's death, he was a ward of the state of California. Juvenile. He was a ward of the juvenile courts, not just a ward of the state, but he's already getting in trouble, and he's age 13. So at age 13, he's lost his father, and his mother has already abandoned him. If I look at the 1940 census, my father is 6 years old as a boarder in the house of a couple, not his parents. Now, his dad lives in the same town in the 1940s. He's in San Francisco as well, but they're not living together. And his mother kept her older daughter, remarried, and moved to another state. And so now he's only 6 years old, but this has got to affect him. He's been abandoned. And to find this information that he was in a ward of the juvenile courts, his father dies when he's 13, his mother's abandoned him, and now he's making these bad decisions to try to rob, he got pulled over for speeding past cops and going on a chase. These different newspaper articles I found. When the world fell apart and he abandoned me, this is how I was able to forgive him. He never had a chance. He never knew how to be a father. He didn't have one. He wasn't shown. The ward to being a ward of California isn't teaching you, is not the love of a father, a mother and a father. And as far as my mother is concerned, manic depressive, her mother, which would be my grandmother, was an alcoholic. And she spent time taking care of her mother and being a mother to her siblings, getting married right out of high school to an abusive man, to replace him with another abusive man, my father, and then to pass away with a third man in the company of a third man who the Huntington Beach police chief said to my grandfather, don't look him up. Don't bother him. He's a bad guy. So my mother had a pattern of picking bad men. Why? I don't know. The histories of my parents explain a lot of why what happened to me. Growing up, this is the part that gets me. Growing up, I felt that I was an inconvenience, for being born, because I didn't know all these facts. And so many adoptees, I hear them say it, what was wrong with me? What was wrong with me that you would just leave me like that? What did I do? Was I that much of a problem? No, I wasn't. The way my parents raised me, my adopted parents, it continued that I felt like I was such an inconvenience. Just because the part where, as I grew older and I didn't meet their expectations, I wasn't that blank slate that they were promised. But as far as being adopted, and I was angry a lot growing up. If I'm not careful, that anger could come back. But I have to remember, my parents had their own deep seated psychological, woven into the fiber and the fabric of their being is trauma. And they passed it on. My grandmother that gave birth to my father, she through the sense of reading that, she was abandoned and adopted. And she abandoned my father, who in turn abandoned me. And so that has helped me forgive. And the thing about forgiveness is, like, you have to say, why would I forgive that person? Don't you know what they did? That's something that you have to decide and wrestle with. But in your unforgiveness, are you affecting them at all? You're not hurting them. You are only compounding and hurting yourself. And I'm not trying to be dismissive of anybody's pain or trauma. I'm not. I've had my own share. But not forgiving the person that hurt you doesn't stop them or hurt them. Their life can go on. They can be completely happy. If they have like one of those personalities where they have no sympathy or no empathy for people, they could care less that you're hurting. And you're not hurting them by not forgiving. Forgive them for your own sake and for your own healing. Believe me, it's not easy to do. I'm not saying it's easy. It's sometimes it's like climbing a mountain. It's like it's a hard trek.
It is, Michael, and thank you so much for sharing that with such eloquence and with such detail, because that is really the point of finding the truth. And the truth a lot of times is really, really difficult. But at least we're dealing with the truth and not what we're imagining to be. And from there, you're right. Like, you said you wanted to originally slap your father, but when you found out what he went through, it changed your heart. And therein, some healing and some forgiveness was able to happen. So that's definitely, it's just such a hard, excruciating journey to go on.
If my father was alive, and I doubt that he is, he'd be 89 years old. His lifestyle, from what I can glean from newspaper articles, he lived a rough life. I doubt that he's alive. I unfortunately still have not been able to find out where he's buried. I can't find any, even the private detective. They couldn't find any electronic trace. The latest trace, or is the newspaper article of my birth. After that, it's a ghost. If I could find it, I want to go there. If he was alive, I would want to meet him, and I would want to hug him and say, I forgive you. And if it's bothered you all your life, don't let it, because I understand why it happened. I wish it hadn't happened. I wish I hadn't lived this particular life, but would a life under his care or would a life in foster care have been better? No. I had a good life. I'm not going to say I had a great life. I had a good life. When I say I didn't have a great life, it's just because of all the inner turmoil, being a teenager, hormones, my parents, how many, all those different agencies that said, oh, we have a young couple and they're a diplomat and they're going to adopt your baby. I literally was adopted by a diplomat. So not the country, but we lived overseas. I spent 12 years of my childhood in other countries and moved around. So, I mean, that adds to the trauma, and also adds to my ability to withdraw. So I can be very aloof and distant, and I can, like at the drop of a dime, I can just kind of like, hey, where did he go? I've had people say, hey, did I do something wrong? I just tell them, no, it's not you, it's me. Sometimes I just withdraw and keep to myself.
I think a lot of us can relate to that, Michael. And as we shape up the last few minutes we have together here, and I was thinking about the other thing you wrote to me about the pearl. And I just think there's a lot of hope in that. Can you talk a little bit more about that message that you sent me? Because I think it will resonate with the adopted people and other people listening out there.
I'm going to preface it by saying that I think that adoptees are a bunch of snowflakes. Wait for it. 3, 2, 1. As people are getting mad at their, wait, you're calling me soft?
Crazy.
Yeah. No. I say that adoptees are snowflakes because I've always been told that no two snowflakes are alike. Mm-hmm. Everyone is completely different. I had to look it up to see if that was true. And come to find out, there's some guy, he's a scientist who's been in college for a long time, and his life's work has been studying snowflakes. Like, are you serious? All right. So this guy's he's able to focus. And he was saying that in a snowstorm, if you take a snowflake and put snow in and you magnify, they will you're like, oh, look, these snowflakes are all the same. I say that, let's say you're adopted from Korea and you look like from a distance, oh, their story is all the same. Oh, they're from South America. Oh, their story is all the same. Or we were adopted out of the Catholic Charities. Oh, their story is all the same. But then you start to zoom in and magnify under that microscope, and you get closer and closer and closer and closer and look at the individual snowflakes, the different amount of pressure, the different amount of water, the atmosphere, the conditions that fell from the sky and from how high it fell, that when you get down to it and you look at each individual snowflake, no two are alike and no two adoptees are alike. There are some general similarities, but when you start to drill into their life, they're unique. So I think they're not really snowflakes. They're made out of steel, really, because being adopted is not necessarily easy. The oyster. Commonly, it is. People think that a piece of sand. I've always thought this. I've always said this, that it's a piece of sand that gets inside an oyster, and it irritates. But it's actually a bacteria. So this bacteria gets inside an oyster. And as a way to combat it, because it can't get rid of it, it covers it over with the mucus, and it keeps covering it. And the layers of mucus harden. And one day somebody goes, hey, I'm gonna have oysters, and pops it open, and then there's a pearl. And the different trauma in your life, whether it's adoption, whether it was violence, it was a bad car wreck, it was a bad marriage, the adoption, just look at it as that bacteria that irritated your life, and you ended up covering it over and covering it over and covering it over. And out of this circumstance that shouldn't be there, a pearl has developed. And look what pearls go for. They're so valuable. There's value in your story. There's value in that pearl that has developed in your soul. Maybe you don't reach an audience of 100,000, but there's probably 5 people within your sphere that even if it's just one. If all I am is a husband to my wife, and we just celebrated 32 years together, if that's all I do in my life, if that's all I can provide for is her, is that a bad thing? Because I've heard so many stories of wives who are just, their husbands are jerks and leave them or whatever. So if all I do, if all my experiences have led to, well, my life and the conditions of her life and the conditions of my life led us to each other. And 32 years later, I can't live without her.
It's just been such an incredible interview. Is there anything that we didn't cover? Any last things you would like to say before we sign off?
No, other than for myself, I really appreciate what you do, and there's those other podcasters, because that has actually been my counseling. That has been my therapy. When I started hearing the first one, I was like, how did I get here? And I was like, is there any conversation about being adopted? I never felt, well, I did always feel like I was a weirdo. I said, well, you are a weirdo. So in listening to, when I found those podcasts and I heard these different people, men and women, saying things, I'm like, that was me. That was me. That's just been so helpful. So thank you to you for doing this, for this podcast. It's incredible.
It is my absolute honor. And thank you again for just your compassion and your messages. We are a community that cares about each other, and it's been shown in so many ways. And I just am so grateful to be able to be part of this amazing group of pearls. You all are so strong and incredible. And I know it's hard, but we can do this. We can keep each other going, and we can pull over when we need to, and we can quiet down, and we can just get back up and keep on going down our healing path together. So from my heart to yours, Michael, thank you so much for opening up your life to us and sharing. I know a lot of people, this podcast is going to mean a lot to a lot of people.